Story 1. The elevator always arrived, even when no one called it. This happened to me in 2017. At the time, I worked security for a medical complex in Boston. It was one of those massive campus-style facilities, dozens of interconnected buildings, most of them medical offices and outpatient clinics. My shift ran from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., which meant I was alone in Building C most nights, doing rounds, logging door checks, making sure nothing was out of place. It was a comfortable gig. Boring, but steady. The building was locked up by 9, and once the janitorial staff left, it was just me and the echo of vents. There were 2 elevators in the building, one in the front lobby and one in the back near the freight corridor. The front one was bigger and newer, with smooth doors and that soft mechanical chime. The back one was older, slower. You could hear the gears whining as it descended, and it always had this faint smell of metal and grease, even after cleaning. That one, the back elevator, started doing something strange. At first, it was barely noticeable. I'd hear the motor hum just after midnight, and the doors would open in the lobby level. But no one was there. The first few times, I figured maybe it was being recalled from a maintenance setting. Sometimes techs forgot to reset it, or maybe a power flicker sent it back to default. It wasn't impossible, but then it kept happening. Always at night, always around the same time. It would arrive at the ground floor with a dull clunk, sit there with its doors open a little too long, and then eventually shut again. Not leaving, just sitting, as if it was waiting for someone to remember something. After about a week of this, I asked the day guy, Mark, if he'd noticed anything. He hadn't, said maybe the wiring was old. He joked that maybe it was lonely. I laughed it off, but something about the way it moved. It wasn't random. It would arrive at different floors too. Sometimes I'd find it open on the 3rd floor, even though the entire level was unlit and locked. Other times, it was already at the basement when I came down to check the boilers. But what got to me, what really unnerved me, was how the behavior slowly changed. The door started staying open longer, like it was hesitating. The light inside the cab would flicker for a split second when it arrived, just enough to notice. And it started to make this low, mechanical grinding sound, like it was forcing itself into motion even when no one requested it. One night, I decided to stand in front of it, just watch it. I stood near the service hallway, arms crossed, not touching the call button. The building was quiet, that kind of still where even your breathing sounds too loud. Then, right at 12:04 a.m., I heard it again. The distant groan of movement from below. Gears catching. The floor indicator above the door lit up. It was on its way up. I hadn't touched anything. It stopped on my floor, let out that tired sigh of hydraulics, and the doors eased open. There was no one inside. The light buzzed gently overhead, and this time the doors didn't close. They just stayed open. 10 seconds, 15, a full minute. I stepped back, waiting for the safety mechanism to kick in and close it, but it didn't. The doors remained open as if it expected me to step in. I finally reached for my radio to call maintenance dispatch when the doors suddenly started closing, slowly, like something uncertain. And then halfway, they stopped, hung there, wide enough to walk through, narrow enough to feel like a trap. I didn't step inside. I left that hallway, wrote it up as a malfunction in my log, and moved on with rounds. But the image stayed with me. The half-open door, the stale air inside, that sense of quiet anticipation, like the elevator wasn't broken. It was practicing. It was waiting for someone to remember where it was supposed to take them. The following week, I gave in. I'd been thinking about it more than I should have. The elevator, the way it waited, the way it always seemed to arrive just a few seconds after I thought about it. That night, around 12:10 a.m., I stood in front of it again. I still hadn't pressed the button, but there it was. The hum, the clunk, the slow, mechanical rise from somewhere below the basement. It stopped in front of me. Doors opened. I stood there for a second, then I stepped inside. The walls were beige metal, A handrail ran around the interior. The floor had those cheap hospital tiles. Fluorescent light buzzed overhead. Nothing unusual. The panel had the standard floor buttons, G, 1 through 5, and B for basement. I'd been to all of them before. But tonight, I hesitated. I pressed B. The door closed behind me. The elevator began to descend. I watched the numbers light up, 5, 4, 3, and so on, all the way down to B. Then it kept going. No new numbers, just blank. It didn't stop. The hum deepened, became more strained. The vibrations shifted, like something heavier was moving with us. I could feel it through my shoes. Then it stopped. The doors didn't open. No lights on the panel, no sound but the soft tick of cooling metal. I pressed the open button. Nothing. Then I heard something behind the panel. Not inside the elevator, but inside the wall. Something breathing, long, slow inhales. There's no way to explain what happened next, not in any way that sounds sane. But the speaker, the tiny intercom grill under the panel, crackled. And then I heard my voice. It was my voice, I know it. And it said, in a low whisper, "Don't get off this time." I staggered backward, heart pounding. Then the elevator lurched, hard, and began to rise again. No ding, no floor lights, just motion. It stopped again after what felt like 5 minutes. The doors opened. I was back at the lobby level. Everything was quiet. The hallway looked the same. But the smell, there was a faint, sweet rot in the air, like wilted flowers. I stepped out. Nothing looked different, except the clock on the wall. It was 2:46 a.m. I'd only been gone 10 minutes. That's what the clock said. But my shift log, still open at the front desk, said I'd missed 2 full rounds. I checked my phone, battery drained, dead. I checked my watch, 4:12 a.m. I never rode that elevator again, but sometimes when I walked past the hallway, the doors would be open, just slightly. I left that job not long after, transferred out of state, took a similar position at a smaller hospital near Hartford. New badge, new building, same hours. It was easier work, less space to patrol, fewer after-hours incidents. For a while, things were quiet. Then, one night about a year ago, I was helping escort a technician to the imaging wing. She'd left her badge in the lab and needed clearance. We joked a little, made small talk. As we turned the corner, one of the elevators down the hall dinged. Neither of us had touched the button. It opened slowly, empty inside. I hesitated. The tech kept walking, but I stared at the elevator, my gut twisting. The interior wasn't identical, but it was close. Same handrail, same light, same pause before the doors began to close again. I didn't say anything. I tried to write it off. Mechanical error, some internal test cycle. But over the next few months, I started noticing things. The same elevator would open randomly during my rounds, always at night, always empty. One time I stepped toward it just to test my nerves, and the light inside flickered in the exact same pattern I used to see back in Boston. 3 soft pulses, pause, 2 quick ones. It was the pattern I used to count while waiting to fall asleep during my old shifts. It made no sense. Different hospital, different system. Last month I came in during the day for a health screening. I wasn't on the schedule, just visiting. I walked through the main atrium, past the elevators, and one of them opened. No one was there. I kept walking, but as I passed, I thought I heard something. Barely audible, maybe just the hum of the shaft or my own nerves playing tricks on me. It was the faintest whisper. Still here. I don't work nights anymore, but I never take the elevator in that building, and I never will again. Story 2. I watched the security cameras until someone watched back. This happened to me in 2019. At the time, I was working third shift security for a mid-sized office park in Denver. It wasn't the kind of job anyone brags about, but it paid all right, and I liked being alone. The buildings were mostly dark after 6 p.m., aside from the occasional late-night accountant or data entry drone burning hours for a deadline. My post was in the central security booth. Think of a glass cube with tinted panels and monitors stacked too high across a curved desk. From that station, I could view feeds from every hallway, loading dock, garage entrance, and emergency stairwell in the complex. Over 50 cameras in total, some in color, others in grainy infrared depending on how cheap the install had been. It was my second winter in that position. By then, I had a rhythm. At the start of each shift, I'd run a time-coded playback on all feeds for the previous 12 hours, just to confirm nothing went unlogged. Most nights, the review was mind-numbingly boring. Occasional cleaning staff, contractors hauling in cabling, a janitor tossing trash. But one Tuesday, something small caught my eye. I was scrubbing through footage of the West Loading Bay. Around 2:47 a.m., there was a flicker in the feed. At first, I thought it was the connection lagging. It happened sometimes if the server spiked, but then I noticed something in the corner of the frame. Me. I was visible in the reflection of the glass door across the bay, standing in the booth, like normal. I paused the footage, rewound. I compared it to the booth cam itself, and there I was again. Same timestamp, same posture, same frame, except something was wrong. In the booth cam, my face was turned slightly toward the door, neutral, watching, but in the reflected image, I looked different. My mouth was open, just slightly, but enough to notice. I checked again, rewound a few seconds earlier. I watched myself reach for a pen, then lean back, then that frame again. Mouth ajar, no movement, just frozen for a fraction too long. I didn't remember speaking. I didn't remember yawning. I didn't remember any moment where my face had gone slack like that. I chalked it up to compression errors, poor quality stream. But the next night I reviewed the tapes again just to check. 2:47 a.m., same bay, same camera, same reflection. And again, my mouth was open. This time, though, my eyes weren't pointed at the screen. They were pointed to the left, toward the fire door behind the booth, something I couldn't see from that angle. It made no sense. I knew my own patterns. I'd been sitting at that desk, watching that playback, when the image had been captured. And yet, in the reflection, I was facing somewhere else. I'd let it go, for a while. But every night after that, the same anomaly would appear, always in one frame, always in a reflection, and always just slightly off. Once, my hand was lifted as if waving, though I never moved it. Another time, my shirt had a logo that didn't exist, a triangle instead of the standard circular patch. I looked it up. No prior branding change had been logged, not in years. That's when I started recording the playback sessions myself, setting my phone on the desk and filming the live monitors during review. I figured maybe I was imagining things, but that only made it worse. In one recording, there was a 5-second delay on every camera, not glitchy, precisely 5 seconds. I checked the metadata. Each feed was lagging the same amount, except for one. Cam 12, booth interior. That one was ahead by exactly 5 seconds, and it showed me blinking before I did. I froze when I noticed it, rewound the recording on my phone, played it side by side with the monitors. No doubt, my on-screen self moved before I did, blinked, tilted his head, lifted a cup before mine had left the desk. I sat back, and for a moment I swore I could feel something staring at me, not from the hallway, not from outside, from the screen. I kept it to myself for weeks. I was starting to lose sleep. I'd get home and stare at my own bathroom mirror, expecting my reflection to do something first. I unplugged the cameras in my apartment, covered the ones in my phone with tape, but it didn't help. The worst part was the feeling that I wasn't alone at work anymore. Even though the building was empty, even though every round confirmed the place was sealed and cleared, it felt like something was watching me from the feeds, not from the physical building, but from the footage itself. One night around 3:30 a.m., I was finishing up my shift when I noticed something in Cam 21, the hallway leading to the third-floor server room. A figure, just barely visible in the corner facing the wall, seated. I zoomed in. It was a man in a collared shirt, balding, hunched forward. His hands were on a keyboard, but there was no desk, just typing motions in the air, mechanical and rhythmic. The timestamp was real time, but when I flipped to the hallway live feed, it was empty. I rewound. The man appeared again, then vanished. The motion detection hadn't even triggered. A few nights later, he showed up again. Different camera, this time near the boiler hallway. Still typing, still from behind, still as if the desk were there but invisible. I printed the frame and filed a report to my supervisor. They said it was probably a compression error or someone tampering with the feed, but they didn't pursue it. The following shift, the man appeared in 5 different feeds. Always facing away, always typing, and always a little closer to the booth. The worst part? In Camzo 2, the interior of the break room, I saw him standing behind the vending machine. Just his reflection in the plexiglass. He wasn't in the room itself, but in the reflection, he stood still, not typing anymore, just watching. I shut the monitors off that night. First time I ever did that. It felt like retreating, like giving in. But I couldn't handle seeing him again. Not with the lights on. Not while the booth was full of those glass panes. I didn't sleep the next morning. When I went to shower, the mirror was fogged. I wiped it with my palm. And there, just for a moment, I thought I saw a figure behind me, but it was gone before I turned. That night I turned the monitors back on. I had to know. I checked every feed, every angle. Nothing, no sign of him. I leaned back, almost relieved. Maybe it was over. Then, from the corner of my eye, I caught it. Not on a screen. In the reflection of my monitor, there was a face, behind mine just for a moment, close enough to fog the glass. I tried to delete the recordings the next night, pulled up the storage partition and clicked through every day's log. But the footage was corrupted. Each file played back as static, and then, somewhere near the end, I saw a new entry. The file was titled, "You," no timestamp, just the word. I clicked it. It was black for a few seconds. Then, grainy footage began to play. It was of the booth, the same angle I saw every day, except this time the man was seated in my chair, typing, and the date in the corner, tomorrow. I stood up. The monitors all flickered, every feed lit up, every camera angle displayed the booth. No lobbies, no hallways, no garages, just me. 50 versions of me, and each one, every single one, was doing something different. One was drinking coffee, one was smiling, one had its eyes closed. But only one, center bottom, was looking directly into the lens, staring, unblinking. I pulled the power. The booth went dark. The air felt dense, like a storm was pressing inward. I grabbed my bag, badge still on, and walked straight out the front lobby. Didn't finish the shift, didn't say a word to anyone. I quit the next day, blocked the number, told them I was dealing with medical issues, but that wasn't the end. The file showed up again, on my home computer. Different extension, but same name, U2. This time, the video was of my bedroom, shot from above, like a ceiling cam. I live alone. No webcams, no smart devices, no cloud backups. But the angle was perfect. It showed me sleeping, still, face down, and in the corner of the footage, barely visible, was a figure standing by the door. I couldn't see his face, just a blur. The playback ended after 5 minutes. I tried to delete it, but every time I closed the folder, it reappeared. Then the name changed. Now, then again. Look, then again. Behind. I haven't opened my laptop since. I keep it in a drawer, wrapped in towels. Sometimes I still hear it turning on by itself, but I never check. Whatever it is, whatever was on those feeds, it doesn't need cameras anymore. It watches where my thoughts go, and I think it's waiting for me to see something I haven't yet. Maybe when I do, it won't need to hide. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. Story 3. There was always one extra patient, but no one could remember her name. This happened in 2022. At the time, I was working nights as a float nurse at a long-term care facility just outside Portland. The building was old, partially renovated, but most of the original structure still remained under layers of cosmetic upgrades. Paint couldn't hide everything, though. The walls creaked like they remembered more than they were supposed to. My shift started at 7 p.m. and ended at 7 a.m. I was mostly responsible for one wing of the east floor, rooms 1 through 10, geriatric psych mostly, patients with late-stage dementia, a few severe neuro cases. One room was usually empty, room 6. That was standard when census was low, except for the fact that we always prepped 10 trays, 10 sets of linens, 10 med charts, and 10 name labels. Every night the same routine: prep the shift report, distribute meds, handle vitals, and help with overnight hygiene. And every night one tray was left outside room 6. Even though it wasn't supposed to be occupied, I didn't question it at first. Float nurses learn fast. Don't make noise, just follow the chart. But after a few weeks, I started noticing discrepancies. Patient census would be 9. Report would list 9 names. But there were 10 trays laid out when I came on shift. 10 towels stacked in the linen cart, 10 med pouches in the fridge. I started double-checking charts. And there it was again. Room 6 was always left blank, no patient listed. But the med sheet had a barcode, just no name, no allergies, no diagnosis, just a room number. One night I asked Clara, an older nurse who'd been there for over a decade, if she'd noticed the inconsistency. She didn't look at me when she answered. She just said, "She's been here longer than most of us." I laughed a little, thinking it was a joke. Clara didn't laugh back. I tried skipping the tray once, just to see what would happen. The night was quiet. Room 6 didn't light up on the call board, no noise, no complaints. So I left it empty. The next morning, when I went to clock out, my key card beeped red. Access denied. I tried the staff locker room, same thing. One of the aides let me in manually. Inside, I found my locker open. My extra scrubs were gone. In their place was a folded note. It was written on the back of a breakfast menu card. Block letters, printed in thick pen. "You forgot her, don't forget again." Below that, in smaller handwriting, "She's been with us longer than you." I still remember the handwriting, the way the tail of the G in forget dragged down, uneven and shaky. I didn't tell anyone. I just put the tray back on the cart the next night. No questions, no skips. After that, room 6 never showed up as empty again. There was always something, a noise from behind the door, a whisper when I walked past with linens. Once, the handle turned on its own, but only slightly, not enough to open, just a nudge, like someone checking to make sure I was still there. About a month later, things escalated. It started small, the usual stuff. My name missing from the schedule, then reappearing. Blank pages in the MAR where room 6's entries used to be. A shift note I'd written vanished from the log, replaced with a short phrase typed in all caps: "Do not document room 6." I printed a screenshot and brought it to the charge nurse on call. Her name was Lisa. I'd worked with her for over a year. She looked at the paper, squinted, and said, "That's not your handwriting." I told her it was typed. She didn't respond. Later that night, while checking supplies near the medroom, I passed room 6 again, and the door was slightly open, not ajar, just cracked, maybe half an inch, enough for the overhead light from the hallway to spill into the frame and vanish. It was the first time I'd ever seen it open. I stood there for a while. The call board was quiet. The monitors were still. The whole hall felt paused. I stepped closer, placed my hand on the edge of the door and pushed. It opened slowly. No resistance, no sound. The inside was pitch black. No light fixture, no bulb, no switch. I pulled out my phone and used the flashlight. The walls were bare. No bed, no chairs, no sink. Just 4 flat walls and the faint smell of antiseptic. But as I moved the light, something caught my attention. The far wall, opposite the door, was covered in prints. Handprints, dozens of them, all small. child-sized, pressed flat against the paint, some higher up, some at shoulder level, some smudged like they'd been dragged. I stepped forward almost without thinking. The air in the room was cold, like a freezer, the kind of cold that seeps through scrubs and settles in your chest. The floor creaked beneath me. It felt soft. When I looked down, I saw a faint outline in the dust, a mattress imprint, still warm. I knelt and touched it. The warmth was real, not imagined. There hadn't been any patients in this room for years, according to the logs, but something had been lying here just before I entered, and then I saw the floorboards near the corner. Someone had scratched into them. At first it looked random, just gouges in the wood, but when I tilted the light, the letters became clear. It was my name, scrawled in uneven lines, backward, as if someone had written it while facing the wall. I left the room, closed the door gently, didn't report it, didn't speak of it again. But every time I passed that door after that night, I could feel it, the warmth, the watching, and sometimes, when I walked away, I'd hear a second pair of footsteps, not following, just pacing behind the door. Eventually, I couldn't stay silent anymore. I brought it up during handoff one morning, our shift meeting. Nurses gathered in the break room, running through overnight events. When it was my turn, I asked a simple question. Who's assigned to room 6 now? There was a pause. No one answered. Then Clara, the senior nurse, cleared her throat and said, "We told you never to open that room." The others didn't react, just looked at me, blankly. Then one of the newer CNAs, a girl named Renee, leaned forward and said, "Wait, who's Clara?" We all turned to her. She looked confused. Clara blinked once, looked at her badge, looked at me, and then she smiled. But it wasn't the usual kind. It was stiff, like something copied and pasted from an old memory. I turned to the charting computer and pulled up staff records. There was no Clara listed on the shift. No one by that name had been scheduled for over 2 years. I scrolled deeper, checked the HR system. Nothing. Renee stood up and walked out without saying another word. We didn't see her again after that week. She stopped picking up shifts. Her badge was turned in, no exit interview, just gone. The next few nights, room 6 was quiet. No tray, no lights. Then, the following Monday, a new tray appeared on the cart. No label, but the meds were prepped. I checked the pouch. No patient name, just one word on the sticker: returned. I started waking up with marks on my wrists, small ones, faint, but shaped like fingers. 3 one night, 5 the next. One morning there were 2 impressions on my pillow, as if someone had rested their head beside mine. I left the job not long after, no 2-week notice, just walked out halfway through a shift, keys left on the med cart. But I still dream about that room, and in every dream I'm walking down that hallway again. The door opens. Inside, the handprints are moving, shifting, smearing, reaching for the floor, and I can hear my name being whispered from the walls, backward, over and over, and I still don't know who she was. But I know this: she never left that building, and no matter how many names go missing, there will always be one tray too many.